Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, Little Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York. We welcome you to our broadcast this morning. This first Sunday of Epiphany, it's January 8th. I know we've missed a couple weeks. We had the big storm here in Buffalo, and then I was on vacation for a week and just didn't get to it. So 2 Sundays worth of recordings are missing. However, we're up to the January 8th, the first Sunday of Epiphany, or after Epiphany. First Sunday after the Epiphany. And the gospel text appointed in the one-year cycle is from the Gospel of Luke, the 2nd chapter, verses 41 to 52. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days as the return, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? But behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Did you not know that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which he spoke unto them. And he went down with them to Nazareth, and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man. Now, the part that we're looking at particularly is verse 49. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Here ends that portion of the text. Now, in Greek, it reads a little differently than this. It's more like, Did you not know that I have to be about the things belonging to my Father? Not my things, not my business, not my issues, but His, the things that are His. And this idea of must be about, the word dei is in there, and dia with the, let me go back here. Yeah, dia with the genitive. It's something. Let me read here. Of place properly after verbs denoting an extension or a motion or an act that occurs with the agency. In other words, he said, don't you understand that I don't have my own agenda. I don't have my own ideas here. I've come here to do entirely what my dad wants me to do. And it's on that idea that we want to look at this morning. There used to be several years ago a little bracelet. What would Jesus do? WWJW, I think it was. No. WWJD? What would Jesus do? Something like that. Anyways, that's kind of a nonsense bracelet for the reason that Jesus right here at 12 years old tells his parents and everyone else listening that, hey, I'm not here to show off. I'm not here to prove how bloody brilliant I am. And he was. Although he really had not gone to any notable rabbinic school. He'd grown up in Nazareth. And so basically, under Jewish rule, the Mishnah, the oral law, under the Mishnah, he would have spent the first 5 years learning from his mother. That was how the Mishnah directed life to be. A young Jewish boy and girl would have studied under the mother. And then from 5 to 7, he would have been under the tutelage of his father to learn the basics of Torah and the writing of the Torah and how to hold the stylus and how to, he would have practiced first on a tablet with probably wax on it, as the Jews normally did, or on a piece of slate, because you could wipe it off and start again. So it's kind of like in my day when we grew up, kids had this big lined paper and a pencil. It was like a small telephone pole. And you had to grab this thing and try to write letters. And then the teachers would instruct you. This is what Joseph would have done with Jesus from the age of 5 to 7. Also, it was the rule among the Jews, the law, that every male in Israel had to write his own copy in his own hand of the Torah. So that at this age, Jesus would have begun getting ready, learning everything he would have need to know about Hebrew and writing and all that to be able to copy his own copy of the Torah. So Jesus at this point would have talked about things religious with both his mom and his dad. His mom would have taught him the basic little songs, the basic little prayers and things like that. And even in synagogue, Jesus, up to the age of 5, would have been sitting with his mother. They didn't actually have a court of the children like they did in the actual temple in Jerusalem, but the children and women. But in synagogue, the women, especially with the small children, nursing children, would be sitting in the back of the room because any little town, even Nazareth, that had 10 Jewish families, was required to have their own little synagogue. And they also had to have the baths for the women, for Nida, for uncleanness, so that they would have had a whole basic little structure in Nazareth that he grew up with. So he had basic understanding of all that, but he was brilliant for a very simple reason. Not only is he true man, but he's also true God. He wrote the Torah. He's the one who talked to Moses and said, "Howdy, how you doing?" Moses was like, actually in Hebrew, it's Moshe. So Moshe would have said, "Huh? First I've ever talked to burning bush. Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground." Sure, bush. Who am I talking to exactly? Because you got to remember, Moses, other than the first few years when his mother raised him, spent the rest of his time in education in Egypt under the Pharaoh's household. So here's the thing. Jesus knew the Torah intimately since he's the one who gave it to Moses and Aaron to teach Israel. And so Jesus would have already begun writing his own Torah because that would have also been the law. And so now Jesus is accompanying his family to Jerusalem, which is also part of the law because once a year, every male of the household, of their individual household, was required to make an annual trip to Jerusalem. That was a required Jewish thing. And so Jesus, along with his parents, Mary and Joseph, and the cousins and everybody else, headed in a caravan, even from that little tiny place, Nazareth, which is like a hole in the wall. It's like East Auto for Western New York. I mean, is there even an East Auto? I don't know. West Auto? North Auto? South? No. Is there even a post office in the Auto anymore? No one's even sure. Okay, that's Nazareth. It didn't even show up on Jewish maps. We've only found one Jewish map from that rough period that even lists Nazareth. Up to that point, scholars were saying, nah, doesn't appear. It couldn't have been real. That's how insignificant Jesus' hometown was. So anyone from a really, really tiny town would understand this. But Jesus had all the essentials. And so once a year, they went to Jerusalem, to the temple, to do the required things of the law that the elder of the family, Joseph in this case, would have had to appear with the other elders of each of the clans, the 12 tribes, and register and do all the other things that were required under the law of their day. Okay, so while they're there, they've been there for about a week. And so by the time they're traveling back after a day, Jesus has been in the temple for around 5 days already. So he's kind of running the show. I mean, you got this 12-year-old kid who seems to be a genius, who seems to be knocking him out of the park. Every question they asked him of the doctors and scholars of the law, he's just flattening them. He's just belting them out of the park. And they don't really know what to say about this because he grew up in Nazareth. He didn't have one of these name brand rabbis that you might find in a big city, in a big synagogue. They may have even had just a rabbi that traveled from little town to little town, like a rabbi supply. Just like you have pastor supply in small places where they travel from district to district. So they were shocked. And Jesus didn't communicate with Mary and Joseph because they just assumed he was around because Jesus just didn't do things wrong. He was one of those super, super easy kids to raise. And if you've ever had a baby that's really hard to raise, you wouldn't have any idea what I'm talking about. However, if you have one that is just one of these little angels that comes up to you and goes, oh, Pop, I wish some more bottle now. Would you be able to feed me? If it's not too much, if you're not busy, would you take some time, just briefly, momentarily, and give your son a baba? Oh, sure, yeah. One of these kids. Oh, Pop, it's time to play. Really? Is it? Yes, would we play now? I mean, this is like Jesus, right? Well, he's super easy. So he didn't do things wrong. They just expected him to be with the relatives and the cousins heading back. There was no reason they would have even questioned it, because it's Jesus. He's the super compliant, easy child. He's not the one that's going to run you ragged and leave you out of breath, just wondering where he might be. What, did he run off, or what's he doing? And so they had no questions. Of course he's with the cousins, but he wasn't. And they spent a day searching for him. They heard about this crazy kid, 12 years old, in the temple, because everyone in Jerusalem was hearing about this. Made no sense to anyone. And there he was. And they're like, Joseph doesn't say much at this point. It's like, your mother has something to ask you, because I'm pretty sure Joseph at this point is like looking around at the elders in the temple going, I'm not going to say anything. Oh, no. No, I don't want to get stoned. No, thank you. However, Mary has a question. Yeah, that's I don't want to say a little gutless, but, that was Joseph. And his mother, verse 48, and his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. So Joseph is just like, nope, I am not going to go down in flames because of what's going on here. No. Mary, however, is like, what's up? And Jesus' answer is, didn't you get it? Don't you understand after all these years? I'm not about the carpentry shop, because you see, Jesus, at 12 years old, a couple things would have already happened. As the eldest son, the firstborn, he would have been legally responsible to take over the carpentry business. He would have also, by the age of 12, have been required, many years before this, to have declared a marriage. That was law. Girls were not required by law to marry, but boys under the Jewish law, in fact, it's the very first of the laws, of the commandments. If you go to the books of the Jewish law and look at the laws regarding the Jews, you'll find the very first one is for a male to marry. And so by the time he was 14 and a half, but here he's 12, but he would have already had to have that lined up, because he's a boy. That's his responsibility. He wouldn't have actually been married yet, but I'm sure he would have had to tell Joseph and Mary who he's thinking of. That would be required. And more than that, they didn't just marry one girl. In Jewish law at that time, a business owner, like Jesus would have been, would have had more than one wife. Because under the law, again, girls didn't need to marry. They weren't commanded to. Boys were. But it was the umbrella for the girls. You were born under the umbrella of your father. Then you were under the umbrella of the rabbi. And if your father passed away, it would have been under your uncles. And then you would have been at 13 and a half in one day for a girl, 14 and a half in one day for a boy, been able to engage and work out the details of the ketubah, that is the inheritance of marriage. So this is all things that Jesus would have been lined up with, and they never would have questioned him, except now he's in the temple and tells them, don't you know that it's my Father's business? And he puts that in verse 49 here, tu patros, en tois tu patros, in the things concerning and belonging to the father of me. Not Joseph, not the carpenter, not the carpentry business in small town Nazareth. No. but rather the temple. The prophecies concerning the Mashiach, the Christ. By the way, Christos in Greek, and Mashiach in Hebrew are the same word. They mean the anointed one, the one who is appointed to a particular task, royal task. And so Jesus not only knows this, but tells them straight up from the age of 12, which back growing up, I was born in 58, so growing up 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were always told, well, Jesus was unaware of that he was Messiah. No, of course he was aware. Here he is at 12 years old telling his mother and father and in earshot of everyone in the temple that this house, the temple house in Jerusalem, is his father's house. And he is the designate elect to do his father's business. That's what this text is about. And what is that business? Very simply, it is to be the sacrifice of the Father for the sin of the world, to save all of his brothers and sisters. Because every one of us has a brother that we don't usually include on our family listing when you fill out, like an annuity in the, if you die, you have to have the people that the money would go to. But he's not in that list. But in truth, we all have a brother that we don't normally count. It's Jesus. And as our brother, he's there to reconcile everyone else to Dad. That was his Father's business. That Jesus would come into the world not to serve himself, not for us to serve him, but instead that he alone would serve his Dad without our help, without our approval, without our worship, without our prayers, without anything from us. In fact, not only do we not help, we are the cause of the problem. It's for us and our mess that he is going to be blamed by Dad. The same blame that otherwise would go to me, Karl. Hang on, I gotta get a drink of coffee here. And so this is the mystery that baffles me. Excuse me. Oh, much better. Need coffee. This is a mystery that's always baffled me. And after being a pastor for 38 years now, retired for 3, I have no closer idea to what this means than I did when I first started. In fact, even it's less clear now. How is it that the Father would lay on his Son's shoulders all of the garbage from all of our lives? I have no clue. And it's not like it's a laundry list of junk we've done wrong or things we didn't do right. It's way deeper than that. It's something wrong with us that comes from our parents. And we can't just go, well, it's their fault. No, it's still our fault. It's inherited and still ours. Don't ask me how that works. But God reckons it that way. And according to his math, he reckons that the death of his Son rescues us all. Not from Satan, not from our sin, not from death, but from him. Because it wasn't Satan, our sin, or death that were our real enemies. They seem like enemies, but they're not. The real enemy is God. And if you're going to have an enemy, it really shouldn't be God. Because if you're like in grade school and you go, watch out for Joe over there. Joe he's mean. He's a bully. He's going to pick on all of us and he's going to give us a rough year. Oh. Well, if Joe is your only problem, you don't really have a big problem because you have school authorities, teacher authorities, and police. Depending what Joe does, you can tell any one of them and they'll take care of Joe. Not a problem. However, if your problem is God, that God A, hates you, and B, God is going to kill you, and C, that God is not only going to kill you, but then destroy you on top of that. Oh, that's a problem. And who can you go to about this problem? Nobody. You're stuck. You totally messed. Why? Because if God is your enemy, it's hopeless. It's pointless. It doesn't matter what you do, good, bad, or otherwise. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die and all go to hell. That formula stinks. But if that's the only formula, okay, then quit church now. I'm quitting this. There's no point. However, if God the Father's business was to change all of that, completely change all that and say, look, yeah, someone has to die for your mess, but it shouldn't be you. You're like, oh, I like the sound of this already. Because this is the gospel. This is the good news. This is what God the Father came up with, and why he did, I have no clue. When did he do this? Long before the world was ever founded. And when did he carry it out? 2,000 years ago. Jesus did it all for us. We don't add anything to it. Even by believing, that doesn't add anything to it. Before you were born, it was done for you. Before you drew your first breath, it was yours. Gift from the Father. It's that simple. And this is how he designed everything. So that, boom, everyone has this gift. This is the Father's business that Jesus was about. That's it. That's the whole thing. So what was the Father's business that Jesus had to do? Oh, save the world. Did he? Yes. He went to the cross. He died. He rose again. It's done. It's finished. The whole world. Saved. So, is God our enemy anymore? No. Now it's not only Jesus' dad, pater. He is our pater. And how do we? Jesus taught us to pray. He said, when you pray, say, our Father. Not his Father. Our Father. Very nice. So that dad is now happy with us. How happy? 80% only holds 20% against you? No. If that's the case, we're still messed. How about 100%? How about when your Heavenly Father thinks of you, he only sees you as perfect as his Son? Does that mean he doesn't see the things you do? Let's say you're, taking care of your grandson, and the little guy gives you this priceless little smile and giggle, and then he wrinkles up his nose and goes, I want the cookies you're eating. What? I didn't know you could talk. Says it all with the face. And then you take care of him. And sometimes he's like, not so happy with you. Other times like, hee, happy. But you see, with us and Dad, he looks at us and he's always happy with us. Never angry, ever. He loves his children. And that's the message of the first Sunday of Epiphany. So that's it. Okay. Take care. Again, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, Little Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York. If you haven't yet gotten all of your shots for COVID and all that junk, go get your shots, including your flu shot. I had the flu a couple weeks back, and just the plain old flu. It wasn't even COVID. Boy, it really knocked me under. So get your flu shot too, and every other shot you can get. Just go get them all, as long as your doctor says it's okay. Okay, well, take care. Bye-bye.